Over the years, many game developers blended RPGs with other genres to create RPG hybrids. And one company that did this was Squaresoft, especially with action and adventure games. But in 1998, the company created perhaps their most daring hybrid experiment when it combined an RPG with another genre that was prevalent at the time: survival horror. The game was Parasite Eve, which has received a lot of praise and acclaim in the years since its release. But what you might not know about it was that the game included concepts that were originally planned for Final Fantasy VII. So I'll explain that in this video, and also tell you whether this game holds up today. I'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything that is Parasite Eve. But before I get into that, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me your best memory of Parasite Eve in the comments section below. Before we get into the gameplay and story, I did want to talk a little bit about the visual approach of Parasite Eve, because this game uses static, pre-rendered 2D backgrounds for its environments, which really is a staple of Squaresoft at that point, and it was representative of survival horror games like Resident Evil, as well as Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII, so this really depicts a similar style in that way. A lot of these settings are streets, police stations, sewers, museums, and hospitals. They're urban settings, and it's a dark and gritty motif. There's a moody tone with muted colors, lots of grays, browns, and greens, and it really enhances the horror atmosphere. For instance, the streets are littered with abandoned cars, and the interiors show sign of wear and chaos, and the fixed camera angles add to the cinematic feel. They do occasionally obscure the visibility of Eve and the other characters, but this also allows tension during your exploration, and the environments are really designed to feel kind of claustrophobic and foreboding and eerie, much like many survival horror games. Now, the 3D character models are polygonal. They're not as rough as they are in Final Fantasy VII, where the appendages are all blocky. These are more representative of what you see in Final Fantasy VIII. They're 3D polygonal models that are overlaid on the 2D backgrounds. The enemies that you find in this game are mutations like rats, dogs, and grotesque humanoid creatures, and they have a body horror aesthetic that's inspired by the game's theme. And I think they're pretty well designed for the style of game this is. It's a freak show horror spectacle, and these enemies are part of it. Now, another staple of Squaresoft games from the late 1990s was the use of FMV, or full motion video sequences, and this game uses those as well. There are many cutscenes for key storyline moments, and they're grainy by today's standards, but back then, they completely blew me away. They really depict the dramatic events that take place in this game, much like they would in Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. So again, they're trying to blend the Final Fantasy cinematic experience with the Resident Evil style survival horror experience, and you really get that in a way that is interesting and it's fun, and it certainly brought this company into its limelight. It's one of the defining characteristics of Squaresoft. The story of Parasite Eve begins on Christmas Eve of 1997 in New York City, setting a festive and eerie tone. The game's events follow Aya Brea, a 25-year-old NYPD rookie who attends an opera at Carnegie Hall while off duty. There, the performance begins with an actress singing on stage, but the atmosphere quickly turns sinister. As the performer on stage sings, her presence triggers a horrific event. Audience members suddenly burst into flames, their bodies consumed by spontaneous combustion. The theater then erupts in chaos as flames spread and spectators either scream or flee. Aya seems to be immune to this phenomenon though, so she survives the massacre, and her instinct and duty drive her to pursue the performer backstage, gun in hand, as one of the few left standing. Confronted, the performer reveals herself as Eve, a being that speaks cryptically about humanity's end and a new evolutionary order. Eve's powers manifest grotesquely. She mutates creatures around her and unleashes energy that Aya counters with her own mitochondrial abilities, dubbed Parasite Energy. Eve escapes, but Aya is determined to stop her, and this is what establishes the game's tone. Aya's journey begins as she grapples with her newfound powers, her role and responsibilities as a cop, and the apocalyptic threat Eve poses to New York City. The entire game's events take place over a 6-day span. And remember when I said some of the ideas incorporated into Parasite Eve were originally planned for Final Fantasy VII? Well, according to an interview with Tetsuya Nomura, who served as one of the lead developers of FF7, that game was originally supposed to take place in New York, where there was an organization that was trying to destroy the Mako reactors, and a character named Detective Joe was investigating them. In an additional interview, Nomura repeated the claim and also added that it was actually Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi that came up with the idea. He said, "I think we wanted to do something like a detective story. There's a character called Hot-Blooded Detective Joe." He also said that the Midgar location was already conceived of at that time, and the characters would actually blow up the city. And as you can tell here, that's not exactly what Parasite Eve is, but in some ways the concepts were incorporated. This game is based in New York, and it is something of a detective story. Instead of having a character named Detective Joe that was hunting down the characters though, in this one you actually have Aya who is hunting Eve. So I thought that it was actually cool and interesting that Squaresoft decided to preserve some of the ideas they felt were worthy, rather than just abandoning them then and there and scrapping them forever. Like you might expect, Parasite Eve's gameplay and battles adopt a style that's also an amalgamation between survival horror games and RPGs. There's a unique active time battle system that is incorporated in the Final Fantasy games that's also combined with movement. So wherever you encounter enemies, Aya can move freely in a confined area during these fights, and that's really important because you have to dodge enemy attacks often, and positioning is really key in Parasite Eve in a way that it's not in so many other RPGs or survival horror games. Aya's primary weapons are customizable firearms, so you can get pistols, rifles, and other weapons with limited ammo. And you can even swap weapons or reload mid-fight and also find ammo all throughout the game. The standalone mechanic that's interesting though in the battles is Parasite Energy. These are mitochondria-based powers like healing, energy blasts, or buffs that Aya gets. And those cost MP, which are essentially Parasite Energy points, which do regenerate slowly over time or through item usage. The great thing about this whole system is I think fans of survival horror games and RPG fans will actually like it, at least to some extent. It might not be the favorite type of combat for either group, but there are enough elements of each genre to please most fans that would be willing to try a game like this. Aya levels up through experience points that are gained from defeating enemies, just like in other RPGs. And when you gain levels, you increase stats like HP, MP, and attack power. Another innovative feature is that you can customize weapons and armor using tools to transfer bonuses like extra armor or critical hit chance between gear. And I really thought this added depth to equipment management and really gave the game more of an extensive and complex system of gameplay than otherwise would have existed. Parasite Energy abilities are also upgraded via a skill tree, allowing you as the player to unlock or enhance powers like stronger attacks or defensive barriers. Inventory management is really critical too, because there's limited slots for weapon, ammo, and items like healing kits, so you really have to be wise about what you want to carry and what you want to discard. The bosses in Parasite Eve are really cool and intimidating too. There's at least one boss per day that you encounter in the game, and there's also a few for several days, so there's a lot of fun to be had fighting these bosses, finding their attack patterns, and circumventing them and destroying them. The standout to me was the T-Rex boss that you fight in the museum because he was super cool and intimidating. He uses tail swipes and bites, and even a fiery breath attack, and it was so fun and fulfilling to evade his attacks and eventually defeat him and move through the game. The composer of Parasite Eve is none other than Yoko Shimomura, who also did soundtracks for Live Alive, Legend of Mana, and many other games. And I really appreciated her work here because it's so different from the score she's done elsewhere. You get a lot of ambient and electronic influences here, and it sounds a lot different than you'd see in other RPGs, so for that I think it's good, and it also plays off the survival horror vibe. What's so great about Parasite Eve is that there's actually a New Game Plus mode that unlocks once you beat the main game. And besides that, there's actually a bonus dungeon called the Chrysler Building that you can do after you unlock the main story. It's a 77-floor skyscraper that's grueling and replayable and gives a lot more gameplay than you'd get in some other games like this. So was creating Parasite Eve the riskiest choice that Squaresoft ever made? Well, probably not, because that honor likely belongs to Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Yeah, that movie. But in terms of RPG hybrids, it probably was. It probably was between this and games like Vagrant Story that combine two genres together in a way that's really unique. And this game is still worth playing today. I think it's a decent offering, especially visually, and players that play Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII may even mistake this one for those two games if they didn't know better. But I do want to hear what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below, what is your greatest memory from Parasite Eve? And please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and consider joining as a Patreon patron or YouTube member to get exclusive perks, including advanced viewings of my videos.